Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I want to try and make this episode rather short and sweet. I want to do a track press update because I had a lot of very interesting comments and questions beneath the last couple of track press episodes, and I've got quite a few cycles accumulated on it now. I want to show you what I just finished doing earlier today. That's right, we've got everything completely broken down for track links. And I have not went through and assessed every one of these with a fine-tooth comb yet. I've got a small pile of links right there that are all bad, and another small pile of some links, a couple of nasty master pins, and some roached bushings, and that's another bad pile right there. But we need to go through all the rest of these and make sure we've got everything in good condition before we even start trying to put any of those back together. And I wanted to give you an update on my thoughts regarding the track press. I've got roughly, I would say, 175, 180 cycles on it now, under pressure. And, well, I ended up using this track press for the majority of the disassembly of the remaining pins and bushings out of those single links because the 30-ton press frame pressed the pins just fine, but I could not get it to press the bushings. And one interesting thing I found was all of the pins in the tracks, or in the links, all pressed easier than the bushings. The pins routinely let go around 20 tons and then drifted out from 12 to 15 after that. The bushings mostly wanted to let go at 30, some 35 tons, and it took about 20 tons to drift them the rest of the way out of their bores. So the bushings definitely press harder than the pins, and the 30-ton ram was at its limit even trying to move a bushing. So what I ended up doing was taking all of those links that still had an individual link with a pin and a bushing left in it, I flipped them around and then just set them back in here and used the 50-ton ram to finish pressing those the rest of the way apart. So like I said before, the reason why I wanted to try and press the remaining pins and bushings one at a time in the 30-ton press was to keep the cycles off the track press machine because, yeah, it's got a lot of power, a lot of strength, but I don't know what its lifespan is going to be. So I was trying to conserve that power and strength for when I really needed it for disengaging that first initial link and then pressing that link back on to reform a cohesive chain of track. But I had to fall back on the main press because the smaller 30-ton just wouldn't do it. All right, so another common question that came up in the comment section under the last episode was, why am I going through all the trouble of pressing out pins and bushings to turn them 180 degrees to renew the wear surfaces and press them back in when I could potentially just take the chain from one side, flip it around, put it on the other side, do the same with the one from that side. You would reverse the direction of the chains. You would also reverse the thrust that is being applied to the pins and the bushings, and that way you wouldn't have to take them out and turn them 180 and you'd be accomplishing the same thing, right? Well, I made an episode talking about this very thing several months ago, and that little link that just popped up somewhere on your screen, if you haven't already watched that episode, I highly suggest you go back and look at it because it explains in depth the geometry of track links on crawler tractors and how it is very important to only run them in the proper orientation or the proper direction. You can fit a track chain on in reverse, but it throws the geometry off. It is going to interfere with the sprocket picking up a bushing. That bushing is then going to have to rotate under pressure on the sprocket teeth as it picks it up and brings it around. It's not a good idea at all to reverse track chains. That's why it's been industry standard maintenance routine to just press track pins out and press bushings out when they've reached a certain amount of wear, turn them 180 in the links, press them back in, because reversing those links is a very bad idea. Another question was, is this some kind of like a farmer hack or just something we're doing like a backwoods bush engineering kind of thing to extend track life? No, this has actually been in practice since they've been building these tractors. I'll refer you over to the service manuals. Here's the D2 manual, here's the D4 manual, but it states right here, to obtain maximum life of track pins and bushings, the wear on the outer diameter of the bushing should not exceed 1/8 of an inch before turning. To turn pins and bushings, they should be pressed out, rotated 180 degrees, and reinstalled to obtain new contact surfaces. That external wear they were talking about, I did not touch upon last time because the bushings from the tracks that I'm working on now do not really have external wear at all. This one does, and that's where that sprocket would always pick up the bushing. So if I put the straight edge up to it, I think you can see right there, we've got quite a gap. That's that external wear that they're talking about, and that's from the sprocket routinely just picking that up in the same spot all the time and pulling it on around. Another common question was, what kind of setups did Caterpillar use to press the links apart and back together again? There are various illustrations in here. Basically, it's just another heavy-duty support braced track press with a large hydraulic cylinder and basically forcing rods that act upon the pins, the bushings, and they go through the whole procedure. But they also have the portable service press that you can see has lots of rods and adapters and yoke pieces, and these were the setups that would press a single pin or a single bushing in one stroke. So yeah, the tool that I made, or the track press I made, is more like this heavier duty version here, where you can just press more like one link at a time. It's a shorter press stroke rather than, like I said before, having to press those pins and bushings all the way through. Paul Womack had an excellent question that I really wanted to touch on. He said, with your 2020 hindsight thinking cap on, if you had a time machine to go back and build this track press machine again, knowing what you know now, would you change anything about it? Yes, there are a couple things that I would change. The first aspect is my new minimum requirement for a cylinder for a track press to do D2 pins and bushings would be 60 ton. This 50 was at its limit for several of the really stuck links that I had. There were several of them that I actually had to apply heat to get to move. And you can see, here's an example. You can see like where I had heat on that one and also around the pin bore. There was about 10 of those total that I had to resort to heat to initiate movement. And that was another thing that came up quite often beneath a 30-ton press rehab rebuild video. Why didn't you just try heat? The problem with applying heat to tight tolerance press fit bores is if you apply too much of it, you will actually distort the bore and loosen that press fit, and you cannot afford to be loosening press fits on pins and bushings. They have to be extremely tight for a reason. If they are not extremely tight, they will start drifting out because they operate in a very severe, very adverse environment. And yeah, you want to retain that tight press fit. One rule of thumb when you're dealing with press fit components is if you need to use heat almost every time, you don't have enough press power capability. So the ultimate goal is to be able to have the amount of pressure, the amount of strength to disengage those press fits and re-engage again every time at ambient temp without having to resort to heat. So aside from deciding that if I had to do this next time, 60 tons would be my minimum cylinder spec, the only other kind of shortfall I had on this was my driver tools. Now, the pin driver actually held up pretty well. It would want to mushroom a little bit, but for the most part, it held in there. But being that the track pins disengaged easier, like I just got done explaining, the bushing driver suffered some more abuse. I had a lot of mushrooming going on, and you can see where this has started to mushroom yet again. I had to redress these drivers 3 different times on the lathe. Not a huge deal, but it does mean that you have to take your press cylinder out a little bit further every time, because every time you dress these down, they get a tad shorter. I would like to have harder drivers for doing especially the bushing and the pin as well. And one very interesting thing to note from using the pressure gauge on the hand pump, I could tell when it was getting time to dress these drivers, because the bushing driver would always wear first, and as it mushrooms back, your shouldered surface creeps back a little bit more all the time, whereas the pin driver pretty much stayed consistent. If I would get a 1/16 of an inch mismatch from when the pin driver tightened up against the pin to when the bushing driver finally tightened up against the pin, 1/16 difference there put enough of a side bind on the sliding portion of the table. It accounted for a full 10 tons difference in pressure required to disengage pins and bushings. That was one really handy part about having that pressure gauge on the hand pump. You could just kind of watch that and know how your drivers, how your mandrels were doing for wear. Yeah, you wouldn't think that we're using so much just bull brute force here, that 1/16 of an inch difference between your two drivers could account for up to 10 tons difference in force. When both bushings were dressed, 40 tons would disengage almost every one. When the bushing driver needed to be redressed and we were having that mismatch, I could take it up to close to 50 tons every time to initiate movement. That's when I knew we had to do some work down here. Another rather common question was, could you do away with the hand pump and hook a tractor up to this thing and make it easier? You have to realize the pressures with which we're talking about. Granted, this is just a small looking hand pump. It can put out up to 10,000 PSI of pressure. So any of the old Farmalls, the old 350, the H, the Super M, they pretty much top out around 1,500 PSI output. On the 50-ton range, that would put us about 7 tons, okay? And we need 40 tons capacity under the best case scenarios to initiate movement, sometimes the full 50. Even the newer Kubota tractor tops out at about 2,500 PSI. That's only 12 tons. Hooking a tractor to the cylinder, any tractor we have on the place, would be completely ineffective. Okay, just a couple of talking points left and I'll let you all go. A lot of people asked if it would help to soak these tracks in any kind of penetrating oil or diesel fuel or what have you to get them to press apart easier, and that answer is no. These press fits are so tight that not even rust creeps into that joint. Penetrating oil, diesel fuel, nothing is going to loosen the press fits. Now, if you had tracks that had very little internal pin and bushing wear and there was actually rust buildup inside of those areas, causing the links not to want to pivot on each other, then yes, soaking them can sometimes make a difference. You can see here, you look down, every one of these bores is shiny. Okay, everything that was tight, I should say. And you can see the shiny areas on the pins and the shiny areas on the bushings. Like I said, rust cannot even get into press fits that are that tight. And it wasn't just the fact that, yeah, we had a little bit of rust between, the pin and the bushing when we were pressing those initial links off. Even after I had the pins and bushings disengaged from one another and we're taking them one at a time out of the remaining links, they still pressed just as hard. So the surface rust that was in here was not what was sticking us at all. But if you did have surface rust in there that caused them, like I said, not to even want to rotate within one another, and it was causing your links to stick and stay bound, bent, and everything else, yeah, then soaking them would help loosen some of that inside, but it's not going to do anything on the press fits. Another interesting fact when it comes to soaking tracks, water works really well. I know several instances where people have taken tracks that had tight pins and bushings, but they had stuck links, didn't want to pivot, and they went out and threw them in the pond or in the swamp for a couple of months, just left them submerged. And water is what initiated those rust bonds. Water also can soften those same rust bonds. And yeah, when you take them back out of the water, you want to get them freed up and then get all that old water purged out as soon as possible. Otherwise, they're just going to rust and stick again. But it's amazing how well water works for freeing up sticky track links. The last common question was, when you put these back together, could you pack some high quality grease inside those bushings before pushing the pins back in? That's another theory that on the surface sounds like a good idea, but these are made to be dry running tracks. You do not want to put any type of oil, grease, lubricant, anything on any of these tracks. These pins and bushings are extremely hard. They're meant to wear against each other, metal on metal. And if you put grease into those joints, all it's going to do is absorb grit, and that's going to create a grinding paste that is just going to further accelerate wear. They will actually wear less running dry. So yeah, it sounds like a pretty good plan and a good idea, but you definitely want to keep anything that's going to attract and stick dirt out of your tracks. So that's pretty much the update on the track press. Honestly, I'm pretty happy with how it functions. I believe the press frame is built plenty well to cope with anything that 50-ton cylinder can put on it, but actually put it into practice just to do D2 tracks, I would want probably minimum 60-ton cylinder if I had to do it again. That's another thing. I'm hoping not to ever have to do pin and bushing work again. It's not fun. I wanted to do it to these tracks, A, to figure out how to do it and see if I could do it, B, to keep all good Cat OEM tracks on 1113. Granted, I'm up to 4 sets of brand new aftermarket Italian V-Track track chains that'll fit D2 and D3. I could have used any one of those on 1113. I wanted to do the pin and bushing turn because these are such good links to keep all OEM Cat components on this tractor. So that was kind of the second reason why I wanted to go through all this and just do it. But I definitely wouldn't do this work for hire for anyone. It's too dirty, it's too time consuming, it's too hard on equipment, and it's too dangerous. And I would not want to have to do anything bigger than D2 Trex anyway. I'm not sure the tonnage it would take even for D4. I'm guessing 75 ton, maybe 80 if you're really going to do it right. So it's not easy work. All right, that's all I had for y'all. I'm going to knock off for the weekend. We're going to the Albany Tractor Show, Albany, Minnesota. Well, Albany Pioneer Days, it's called, in Albany, Minnesota. And I'm going to spend the weekend there. We're going to take a camper and just kick around for a bit, have some fun. So it might be a few days before you see any new episodes, but I'll see if I can get some footage from the tractor show while I'm there. As always, thanks for watching, everyone. Hope to see you all back again.